Tagging from third is Suarez. Goodell comes running in. He's under it, makes the catch. Here's the throw to the plate. It's in the air. He is out! Cameron Rick hangs on! Oh, man, what a play! Deep to right field. Way up there and way! Second
And welcome back to the Stupid Money Podcast. We have more stupid money to talk about as the Phillies extend Zack Wheeler 3 years, $126 million, comes out to $42 million AAV, which is by far the most the Phillies have spent AAV-wise on a player in the franchise's history. I believe Turner, I guess, would have been second with 30, somewhere around there, where he was, because obviously Harper was around 27-ish, 27 and a half, something like that. But in one offseason, the Phillies take care of both of their top two starters, keep them around. We're going to get into what the rotation could look like in the coming years, but pretty big. These two guys have, for the most part, carried them, at least pitching-wise, the last two postseasons and in the regular season. So this is pretty significant for the Phillies to have Aaron Nola and Zack Wheeler for at least the next 4 seasons.
Yeah, it's tricky with Wheeler when you're kind of projecting what it looks like down the road, because we talked about it, I think, a few episodes ago, that power pitchers aging is always an interesting topic. But I think 3 years with Wheeler, he doesn't necessarily have the mileage on his arm that a lot of those other power pitchers did. So I think 3 years with him, even though he's 35, so you have this year and 3 more after that, it's kind of a sweet spot. 4 years for a guy who's led the league in WAR, I think, amongst pitchers the last however many years.
Yeah, he's first since 2020, I think.
Yeah, he has the lowest postseason whip in history of the sport, and the AAV for this extension is the highest for an extension, I believe, like an extension in the history of the sport. So well deserved for a guy who's been great since he got here. Shout out to the Mets for making him pay for his own postseason tickets when he was injured and kind of ruining that relationship with the franchise, allowing him to walk. And good for John Middleton. I know that at least I was critical of him years ago with the whole not paying Real Muto right away and everything like that. But I mean, since Harper's gotten here, he's done nothing but open the checkbook for guys that Harper wants and guys who have ultimately panned out. Obviously, there's been a few that didn't, but it's like Didi and a bunch of relievers, and you can't really predict a reliever as far as, you know, how they progress year to year and how they change. So Middleton's been great on his signings and willing to open up the checkbook for guys that the front office deems are worth it. And it's been pretty neat to see how the organization has done a full 180 since Harper's gotten here. And obviously a lot of that's, you know, Harper being a top 10 player in the sport, but then with him, ownership has to be willing to not just be like, okay, we got our guy, that's it, and get complacent. So shout out to them, and shout out to Wheeler for taking less money from us initially when he signed here, and then not waiting until free agency to sign his extension.
Yeah, and the last thing you just said there is a good point, because I think some people will say that the $42 million a year might be a slight overpay, but I think it evens out considering in the grand scheme of things, they really underpaid the first time around. And now at the time, it didn't look like an underpay, but it turned out to be one. So them having to pay him a little more in years, he might not be as good as the last four were. I think we have to live with, just because we did get a bargain to begin with. And second thing was, it sounded like some people were, I don't want to say concerned, but a lot of people didn't want, it sounded like maybe he wanted to go 4 or 5 years and like that would scare them away. But then he kind of came out and said in the press conference yesterday that he was content with the length of the extension, because he doesn't want to pitch until he's like 40 and like falling off the mound like we've seen Scherzer and Verlander, who just hit the IL today, kind of dealing with. So it sounds like he's someone who wants to walk away. I mean, a la what happened with Jason Kelsey yesterday, someone who wants to walk away while they still have some health with them. And I mean, just had a kid this week too. I think that's 3 for him now, and they're all like 4 or 5 or younger. So 4 years from now, we're talking about the oldest one, like just getting into grade school. So I think he wants to like see those years, obviously. I don't think anyone minds missing the crying baby years. I don't know that, obviously, but I'm just saying I would assume that he's okay maybe missing right now, but those later years he'd like to be a part of. So it sounds like this was actually a pretty good match, the 3 years. Both sides happy with that. He was not looking to be Tom Brady of pitching.
Yeah, and I think part of that is what we talked about with he had the injury-riddled early part of his career, and obviously not only is it taxing on your body, but the mental side of rehabbing from injuries consistently is very difficult. And obviously he's been great for us since he's gotten here in terms of staying healthy for the most part. The 2 years ago when they went to the World Series, there was kind of the concern with the dead arm towards the end of the season, but knock on wood, for the most part, he's been really good about that. So, I mean, I don't blame him for, 3 years, he's getting $42 million a year. And it's not like he doesn't seem like a guy where it's like, oh, I have to. That's been really good with him and Nola. At least the vibes that I get from them are they're very comfort oriented. They're not kind of looking for money. Wheeler's wife's family's from New Jersey, so that's part of the reason why they initially took less money to sign with the Phillies instead of the more lucrative offer with the White Sox. So they're very comfort oriented and not driven by who has the biggest offer for me. That's what I need. So yeah, I'm sure he's definitely thinking about 3 more years, reevaluate when that time comes based on how the extension goes, and then get out while you still can, kind of, where there's still ability to go play catch with your kids in the backyard when they're old enough to. So yeah, I definitely think that I was probably expecting somewhere more in the 4 or 5 year range just because of how the Phillies have been operating with their contracts, but I was definitely happy to see 3, and I definitely didn't blink when I saw 42 million because that's what the guy's really worth.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I want to take a look at a couple things here. It's the Phillies rotation now through what it was that going to be 2027 and kind of the finances. So we're going to get this up here. All right. So they love to have pop-up ads on here. It's so annoying. Where we got. Oh, they don't have this updated, actually, idiots. I thought I would have been. So you're gonna have 42 million here in 25. It's out. I think they did say they're all equally spread out 42. It's not like weird things or whatever. But so you have 42 here, 42 here, 42 here. So the Phillies. That's a lot of money committed to 3 players in 2027. We're talking close to $120 million there. I think actually a little more maybe. For 4 players: Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, Aaron Nola, Zack Wheeler, and all of them are going to be mid-30s. Wheeler will be late 30s by then. So without this extension even factored in here, the Phillies payroll is a projected 236 for next season, about 192 for 2026, and 2027 you're looking at 150. So next season you're looking at 278 million committed dollars, with just what's on the roster right now. Next year you're looking at 230 something. And the following year, 190, and that's with a lot of guys off the books, and you're still looking at a number 190. I mean, because by 2027, Realmuto's gone, Schwarber's gone, even Walker's gone, Alvarado's gone, Castellanos, he's somewhere up here, he's gone too. So there are a lot of big names coming off, so they're going to have to, one, probably give extensions to guys like Stott, and then 2, like, go and find guys to replace these guys. So they already have a lot of money tied up for the future, and it's kind of interesting because they're going to have to spend more to finish these rosters in 26 and 27.
Yeah, I mean, you can take the easy way out. It's like, oh well, the cap's going to go, or not the cap, but the luxury tax and stuff will go up like it does every year. And yeah, for sure it will. But at the same time, that's why, even though you're in your window now, the trade deadlines are so fascinating, and kind of getting guys like the Griff McGarrys of the world back to at least somewhat valuable in terms of, either giving you good innings or potentially getting their value back to where it was for a trade, because you need guys like Abel and Painter to hit, so you can get them on their rookie contracts where they're still committing not as much money to them as obviously the big money free agent signings, but you're still getting valuable innings at them. That's kind of how you build a team. We've seen it over the years with the Astros and the Braves. They sign their guys to cheap extensions, and obviously that works out for the Braves, but the Astros, it's been a lot of homegrown talent on those, pre-arbitration, basically the contracts that you get when you get drafted and you come up and do that. So getting your prospects to hit, such an important role. But at the same time, if you have to trade a guy like Abel, that's what you have to do. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, so I have Ranger Suarez highlighted here because I don't think they're going to be able to afford to extend him after 2025 now. And I'm wondering, is it even in their best interest after this season to consider trading him with Wheeler, Nola? I don't know if you're getting out, if you can't get out of Taijuan Walker, obviously. Chris Sanchez there, and then Painter will be back, and Abel, if the season goes well, will be a full go. I also think there's a chance they can move him to the bullpen for this final year because guys like Strom and Hoffman come off after 2024. I just don't know where you stand on the future of Ranger Suarez here now, because I think he's an interesting case of just run the contract out, trade him, or throw him to the bullpen.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough because he's so versatile, and you don't kind of want to lose that Swiss Army knife, especially we see how they didn't really use him as much out of the bullpen this year or this past year as they did 2 years ago. But he does give you that option of a bullpen piece. I think if you're kind of evaluating the lefties that can move back and forth between your, bullpen starting rotation, if that's what you so choose to do in the playoffs, I definitely take Ranger over Strom. And then if you're just looking at your lefties in general, I definitely have Ranger above Sanchez and Strom. But yeah, it just depends on how much money he'll command. I don't know exactly what his deal looks like right now as far as how much money he's playing on. I don't really pay that much attention to the international signings when they happen, just because the Phillies don't do it that often significantly. I think right now he's on his arbitration for $5 million. So yeah, once that contract comes up, it'll be interesting to see how they go about an extension. I'd definitely be open to it, but with how it'll just depend. I don't know what that free agent class will look like in terms of pitching. It just depends on that, honestly, because we saw this year it was so slim in terms of Nola signing back with us early, and then the rest of the class being such slim pickings, and guys like Frankie Montas, who haven't been good in 3 or 4 years, were signing for 18 or 20 million. And we talk about how bad the Taijuan Walker contract is in terms of 18 million. Taijuan at least gives us good regular season innings and, is a solid pitcher. Obviously the postseason is a different story, but he was good for us in the regular season for the most part. Frankie Montas hasn't even done that in a year or two.
Right.
So it'll just depend on what that market looks like when it comes time for Ranger to be available.
Yeah, the other thing was, a lot of people, and we talked about it on here, a lot of people said that they made that huge offer to Yamamoto knowing they probably weren't going to get him to lay the groundwork to make a run at Roki Sasaki next year, who might command $400 million without throwing a major league pitch.
I'd say so.
Yeah, in the off chance that they do land him then next year, which I still think they're going to try to go after him. Like, I think then if that happens, that opens up the door to them trying to trade away like Suarez or Walker or something like that. And then I think maybe things get interesting. But until that happens, I think maybe they stand pat with that after the season, because I don't expect, if it's not Sasaki, I don't expect them to go after another starter heading into next offseason.
Yeah, especially, I don't know. Roki's going to be a crazy arms race between, realistically, it should be every front office in baseball. Obviously, he'll have his pickings, and other, some teams will do more due diligence than others. But yeah, I mean, the guy's 21 years old and has, every accolade in the book already. So yeah, I'd say the bidding will probably start at what the Phillies offered Yamamoto. So 350 plus, and only go up from there. So with Wheeler and Nola kind of solidified, you're kind of filling in the middle and back end around that. Obviously we'll talk about Montgomery and Snell. You make a push at Roki next year, but I don't think, with how your salary cap's starting to shape up, I don't think you necessarily need to go into that loaded market looking for an ace.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, let's get into this, because now that Wheeler's out of the way and we know he's going to be here, the Phillies obviously don't need to try to pivot and turn their attention to a multi-year deal for Snell or Montgomery, which I don't really think they were going to do anyway. But there were a couple of rumors that came out that they were interested in either of them on a 1 year or a short-term deal, which pretty much would have been like one with a couple player options or mutual options, something like that. And then it got kind of shot down by some of the Phillies beat writers. So, I mean, it's 5:30 here, March 5th. There's 23 days until opening day. These guys, they got to get.
Really?
Oh, yeah, if you're the Dodgers. Yeah.
Dodgers.
Yeah, Dodgers and Padres in 15 days. So, I mean, it's just, I don't know what's going to happen with these guys. They probably are going to have to end up taking shorter term deals. And I'm just curious if the Phillies think that if the opportunity's out there, if they just want to go, this tax is going to be devastating. The next one they go over, if it's Snell, because I think you're talking about a lot of draft capital loss, because he has a qualifying offer. And then if they go out over this third tax, I think there's a draft pick involved, maybe like a third round pick or something.
I think your third and then your first rounder loses. The way it was for the Mets was, I think they lost a third this past year, and then they lost it from going over this past year. And then if they weren't top 7 in the lottery, their pick drops 10 spots, their first round pick.
Right. Yeah. And obviously, if the Phillies add one of these guys, the chance of them finishing top 7 in the picks is pretty close to 0. So I think that would lead towards Montgomery more being an option, just because there's no qualifying offer attached to him. But I think he's the one that maybe wants the multi-year a little more. So I just don't see this working out logically with either of them. Although they did get either of them, I think they have a legitimate chance of contending with the Braves for the division. And I think it makes facing a Braves lineup, which they've made look not very good the past 2 postseasons, and now this crazy Dodgers lineup, I think it kind of makes them look not as scary now that, your 4 would be Wheeler, Nola, Suarez, Snell / Montgomery, instead of some combination of Walker, Sanchez, whatever.
Yeah, for sure. I think I don't even know if it's a factor as much with the Braves lineup, just because of how, obviously, Olson's a lefty, but just having another lefty I like Sanchez, but having another guy that's very proven, such as, you know, the regular season success that Snell has with two Cy Youngs, or the postseason success that Montgomery had last year. Just having a lefty to kind of go at the Otanis and Freemans and Olsons would definitely be beneficial. But I don't see them going multi-year for either of them. I know Gelb kind of shuts down every rumor that's linking them to either of them, which is interesting because it kind of, I don't know who, Boris has both of them or just.
Yeah, he's got both. That's why they're still out there. Yeah, he's both of them.
Yeah, but I mean, we've kind of realized it since the Phillies have gotten Harper. Boris has developed such a good relationship with the franchise that he's just using them as kind of driving up the market. And whenever he's bored or whenever his client needs teams in on them, he's just like, yeah, the Phillies are interested. Right. And we've always kind of suggested that. But this year, with Heyman and Morosi reporting that the Phillies are in on those guys, and then Matt Gelb, who like is with the team every day and religiously follows them, is like, no, they're not. It's kind of just, to me, it seems like it's Scott Boras just sitting somewhere in Florida, bored, waiting for his guys to do it, because he's had a rough year between, you know, the Bellinger talk in the obviously Bellinger is different because that was, you know, a known 1 year prove it deal after he struggled mightily the last few years. So getting $80 million out of that's pretty good. But Matt Chapman they were expecting north of $200 million after he had an insane April, and next thing you know, he's 3 for 54. So I don't want to jinx it, but it seems like Scott Boras is kind of coming back to earth a little bit in terms of monopolizing contract negotiations in the sport for the last decade or whatever. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see, because I know you said it earlier in the week, but realistically, if these guys want to get ready for opening day and get going, they essentially have to sign this week or early next week at the latest.
Yeah. No, I would think Friday or Saturday at this point would be a cutoff to be ready the first week of the season.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think when Arrieta signed, how late that was. I know like he wasn't ready right away, right? He didn't pitch the first series or something, or did he?
I don't think he did.
Yeah, I thought. Yeah, I think maybe he was like like a week behind because of how late he signed, and I think it was honestly right around here, or even a few days sooner. So yeah, interesting situation for them. I guess we'll see if the price drops crazy. Maybe the Phillies get involved. I think they only have 16 million before that third threshold, so we're gonna keep an eye on that one in the coming days. I'm not gonna say weeks or months, because this really is an hour-to-hour thing at this point if these guys want to get with the team.
Yeah, for sure.